2, 1.
EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt is out. Trump rallies in Montana, and we check the mailbag. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Many a new day will meet my eye. Much news will find me. Okay, in any case, we were going to talk all the news. We're going to get into the mailbag. But first, I want to remind you that our national debt right now is $21 trillion and counting. Why do I remind you of this? Well, because the money that we now owe other countries is greater than the entire economic output of the United States. If your entire life savings is tied to the U.S. dollar, you should ask yourself a question. What is your plan for hyperinflation, particularly if the left decides that it wants to blow out spending even more? Hedge against inflation and hedge against uncertainty and instability with some precious metals. Gold is a safe haven against uncertainty. Now, I'm not saying that you should take all your money and stick it in gold, but I'm saying that my savings plan is diversified and yours should be too. The company I trust with precious metal purchases, Birch Gold Group. And right now, thanks to a little on the IRS tax law, you can even move your IRA or eligible 401k into an IRA backed by physical gold and silver. It's perfect for people who want to protect their hard-earned retirement savings from any future geopolitical uncertainty. Look back historically. When the bottom falls out of everything else, gold tends to safeguard savings. Birch Gold Group are the folks you should trust. They have thousands of satisfied customers, countless 5-star reviews, an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. You all know about Birch Gold's free information kit. For a limited time, qualified purchases can earn up to an additional $10 grand in precious metals for free through July 31st. To find out if you qualify, contact Birch Gold now. Go to birchgold.com/Ben. Talk to one of their reps. Mention I sent you. That's birchgold.com/Ben. Do it now. The offer only runs until July 31st. Terms and limitations apply. Ask your sales representative for details. Okay, so the big news of the day is that EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt is out. And I want to begin by saying that Scott Pruitt totally deserves to be out. So a lot of people are coming to Scott Pruitt's defense. They are suggesting that he was unfairly targeted. They're pointing out the EPA under Barack Obama was scandal-ridden. Yes, that's true. The EPA under Barack Obama was indeed scandal-ridden. I remember when they turned an entire river in Colorado yellow. You remember that? They were trying to get rid of some waste, and so they blew up a barrier in the place that was holding the waste and infused an entire river with this bright yellow copper-tinged gunk. It was great. You know, the EPA under Barack Obama was a disaster. That said, was Scott Pruitt on the up and up? There are a lot of people out there defending Scott Pruitt today, saying that Scott Pruitt was on the up and up. It was all targeted. Well, if that's the case, then you have to wonder, why is it that the only Trump administration officials who have been forced out were forced out for actual reasons of corruption, like Tom Price over at the Health and Human Services desk or Scott Pruitt over at EPA? Like, they haven't found anything on General Mattis over at Department of Defense. They haven't found anything on Mike Pompeo over at State. Even when Rex Tillerson was there and he wasn't a good Secretary of State, they had nothing on Rex Tillerson. And there are a lot of folks who are defending Scott Pruitt today, saying that he was just targeted because he was such a do-gooder over at the EPA, reducing regulations. But the guy who is going to be replacing him, Andrew Wheeler, is going to be just as activist, from what I understand. Donald Trump tweeted out, "I have accepted the resignation of Scott Pruitt as the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. Within the agency, Scott has done an outstanding job, and I will always be thankful to him for this." The Senate confirmed Deputy EPA Andrew Wheeler will on Monday assume duties as the acting administrator of the EPA. "I have no doubt Andy will continue on with our great and lasting EPA agenda. We have made tremendous progress, and the future of the EPA was bright." Well, his resignation letter to Donald Trump is appropriately obsequious. I mean, it is supremely obsequious. And Trump is a big Trump defender. He's a big Pruitt defender, specifically because Pruitt is a big Trump defender. So Pruitt wrote in his letter, quote, "It is extremely difficult for me to cease serving you in this role, first because I count it as a blessing to be serving you in any capacity, but also because of the transformative work that is occurring. However, the unrelenting attacks on me personally, my family, are unprecedented and have taken a sizable toll on all of us." The talk from inside the administration is that Pruitt was actually forced out. This was not him saying that he wanted to go. And the president says that Pruitt did an outstanding job inside the EPA. So here's just a list of the scandals that led to Scott Pruitt stepping down, because there's a lot of talk about Pruitt being unfairly targeted here. Okay, it ain't great. So, number one, Pruitt fired an aide after she refused to alter appointments on his calendar. So an EPA scheduler was asked to delete and change information about past events on Pruitt's schedule, which could be potentially a violation of federal law, since you're not allowed to go back retroactively and change what was on your schedule. EPA lawyers made the aide aware that altering records may be illegal. This is Fortune.com reporting. Scott Pruitt asked his staff to find his wife a job with a salary of at least $200,000, which is not an appropriate use of government staff. She also reportedly agreed that Pruitt had asked subordinates to perform personal work. This is according to Samantha Dravis, a former EPA policy administrator. She told congressional investigators that Pruitt had asked her to help find Pruitt's wife a job. and the salary should be at least $200,000. Scott Pruitt used official channels to try to get a Chick-fil-A franchise for his wife, which is real weird since you can just apply to get a Chick-fil-A franchise. He used a secret email address instead of official ones, even after the Hillary Clinton email scandal. He used a loophole to award staff raises without White House knowledge. Right? This, of course, was very controversial at the time. The White House told Pruitt he couldn't offer high salaries to two of his closest aides, but then he used a loophole in the Safe Drinking Water Act to boost their wages, according to The Atlantic. He rented a Washington, D.C. apartment at a steep discount from a lobbyist. He apparently rented this apartment at $50 a night in Washington, D.C. It was supposedly owned by the wife in a couple who were both lobbyists. Her husband represented clients who had matters in front of the EPA. He chartered lots of flights. He flew first class. He had a $43,000 soundproof phone booth installed in his office, suggesting that there were just too many people attempting to spy on him. He ordered an unprecedented security detail. He was saying there were threats against him, which may or may not have been true. And there are a bunch of other issues with Scott Pruitt, and thus he had to step down. Are any of these fireable in and of themselves? Probably not. But when you aggregate them all together, it doesn't look good for Scott Pruitt, and that is why Scott Pruitt is out today, and appropriately he should be. Again, his resignation letter explains why it is that Scott Pruitt was such a favorite of President Trump. He said, "Mr. President, it has been an honor to serve you in the cabinet as administrator of the EPA. Truly, your confidence in me has blessed me personally and enabled me to advance your agenda beyond what anyone anticipated at the beginning of your administration. Your courage, steadfastness, and resolute commitment to get results for the American people, both with regard to improved environmental outcomes as well as historical regulatory reform, is in fact occurring at an unprecedented pace, and I thank you for the opportunity to serve you and the American people in helping achieve those ends. That is why it is hard for me to advise you. I am stepping down as administrator of the EPA. My desire in service to you has always been to bless you as you make important decisions for the American people. I believe you are serving as president today because of God's providence. I believe that same providence brought me into your service. I pray as I have served you that I have blessed you and enabled you to effectively lead the American people, blessing and serving and serving and blessing and blessing and serving and blessing and serving." So there's a reason that Scott Pruitt was a favorite of President Trump's. By the way, what he did in terms of regulatory reform at the EPA, I agree with a lot of that stuff. But when it comes to being a swamp creature, it's pretty clear that Scott Pruitt, unfortunately, was one of them, and that's why he had to go. There's a reason that Laura Ingraham, for example, was suggesting that Scott Pruitt had to go. Now, with all of this said, the suggestion from the media is that the White House is in turmoil again. Scott Pruitt is out. It's just a constant episode of Survivor over at the White House. This is the cover of the New York Daily News. They said the same thing. They're basically showing all the members of the Trump administration on the front page, and then it had X'd out Scott Pruitt, and it said out, right? And it said that this was Trump's version of Survivor Season 2. Okay, so what? So there's lots of turnover. The real question is the policy getting done for the American people? Now, I will acknowledge that the perception of instability about the administration is not useful. It is not good. Right? The fact is that one of the things that Democrats are counting on with regard to 2020 particularly is a feeling of general unease about President Trump's administration, a feeling that just in general things are up in the air too much. There's a lot of that. Well, that's not great, but is the policy getting done? The answer is the policy is getting done. The policy continues to be quite good other than tariff policy. The economy continues to grow. Report today from the Department of Labor, total non-farm payroll employment increased by 213,000 in June. The unemployment rate rose to 4%, but the unemployment rate increase was only because more people are getting back into the workforce because finally the economy is really moving. Job growth occurred in professional and business services, manufacturing and healthcare, while retail trade lost jobs. Total non-farm payroll increased 213,000 in June, has grown by 2.4 million over the last 12 months. Employment in professional and business services increased by 50,000 in June, has risen by about 521,000 over the year. Manufacturing added 36,000 jobs in June. These are very good numbers for the President of the United States, very good numbers for the country. The participation rates have shown some improvement, labor participation rates. There's a lot of talk during the Obama administration that a lot of people had dropped out of the workforce. Those people are now starting to come back. The workforce participation rate ticked up 0.2 to 62.9%. That's still slightly lower than 63% in February. It's well below the post-Great Recession rate of 65.7%, and it's near the post-Great Recession rate bottom of 62.6%, according to Ed Morrissey over at Hot Air. But at least it's moved in the right direction. The employment population ratio is still at 60.4%, which is still a very low rate. We need more people employed, but the fact the unemployment rate went up is actually good news because more people are getting back into the workforce looking for work again. There's also slow wage growth, but that makes sense because when only 6 in 10 people are working, there's a lot of people who are still entering the job market, creating competition that creates pressure for a lowering of the wages. So all of this is good economic news. All of this is excellent economic news. And President Trump has a right to be proud of it. President Trump has a right to be proud of the economy that he has helped to foster here. Now, with that said, we are looking at more tariffs now. You know, the reason that President Trump is I think undermining his own economy is with his tariff talk. So now President Trump is firing the biggest shot yet in the global trade war, according to the Economic Times, by imposing tariffs on $34 billion of Chinese imports, delivering on a promise to his political supporters that risks provoking retaliation and harming the world economy. So, as I've said many times before, when it comes to tariff policy, I have no problem whatsoever with the President of the United States using tariffs as a tool to lower tariffs in other countries. If he is using tariffs as a ratchet, if the idea here is that there's a tariff on our products somewhere else, so we're putting a tariff on their products here, and now let's lower all the tariffs, that's fine. But the president seems to have a peculiar fondness for tariffs. He thinks that trade wars are easy to win. Well, it turns out the trade wars are, in fact, not easy to win. China is also increasing tariffs, and the EU has increased tariffs, and Mexico has increased tariffs. After months of rhetoric, a 25% levy on $34 billion of Chinese goods entering the United States took effect just after midnight on Friday, with farming plows and airplane parts among the products targeted, according to Bloomberg. China hit back immediately via duties on U.S. shipments, including soybeans and automobiles, which is not good for the United States economy. Trump is already looking at another $16 billion of Chinese goods, suggesting the final total could top $500 billion, more than the U.S. bought in 2017. The Chinese Commerce Ministry is accusing the United States of bullying and igniting the largest trade war in economic history. Now, is this going to be good for all the people he's going to need to win in 2020? I don't see how. I mean, there are a lot of soybean farmers who are going to be damaged by the fact that China is now putting new tariffs on all of this. Now, there's still a lot of folks saying that this is not showing a lot of trade fears hurting the United States economy, but we have not seen this play out yet. There's a report yesterday that folks are holding back capital, that there are new reports from the Fed suggesting that businesses are holding back capital investment because they are perturbed about the future of this trade war. Under a full-blown trade war, according to Bloomberg, in which the U.S. slaps 10% tariffs on all other countries and they respond, economists reckon U.S. growth would slow by 0.8 percentage points in 2020. Trump has already imposed duties on foreign steel and aluminum imports, drawing a response from the EU and Canada, which fret he may go after automakers next. So none of this is a particularly good policy, but we will find out whether it continues to spiral or whether everybody seems to back down, because there was another report yesterday that suggests that China was going to lower its tariffs a little bit, which would suggest that President Trump's strength on tariff policy may be a good thing. So we'll talk about that in just a second. First, I want to talk a little bit about your underwear, because the fact is that it is getting hot out there, and the last thing that you need are uncomfortable underwear in the hot weather. This is why you need Tommy John's. Check out the underwear from Tommy John's, the revolutionary clothing brand that has redefined comfort for people everywhere, including me. Only Tommy John combines the latest in fabric technology with patented wedgie-proof designs for a fit so perfect, it's almost like wearing nothing at all. The wedgie-proof design would have come in very handy for me back in high school, and you will never have to worry about swamp-like conditions below, because Tommy John's moisture-wicking fabrics pull perspiration right off the body. So it's like 110 degrees here in LA today. I mean, it is extraordinarily hot here today. I am very grateful that I'm wearing Tommy John. Their cool cotton fabric dries 4 to 5 times faster and keeps you 2 to 3 times cooler than traditional cotton. Plus, all Tommy John underwear is backed by the best pair you will ever wear, or its free guarantee, so you don't have anything to lose. Stay cool and collected all summer long with Tommy John. No adjustment needed. Hurry to TommyJohn.com/Shapiro and you get 20% off your first order. That's TommyJohn.com/Shapiro for 20% off. Again, that's TommyJohn.com/Shapiro. Let them know that we sent you. And again, you will ensure that Tommy John's gets you those underwear at 20% off your first order when you use that promo code Shapiro. So all of that, check that out. Okay, so is any of this going to be good for the U.S. economy? Well, the dollar has been knocked, so that's not good. According to the Financial Times, what we are looking at right now, the possibility of a trade war is going to have an impact on the strength of the United States dollar. According to Andrew Milligan, who's the head of global strategy at Aberdeen Standard Investments, with so many mixed messages coming out of Washington, it may be a relief for investors to focus on hard data such as Fed minutes and payrolls report. The combination should reassure investors that whatever the travails of some emerging markets, the U.S. economy remains in robust shape. China's stocks found support. Wall Street equities indices are holding steady, and European bourses are drifting lower in cautious trade as investors tracked the latest round of the international trade dispute. So the U.S. dollar was knocked a little bit. It lifted Wall Street futures back over flatline and pushed treasuries lower. You know, the economic reports continue to be good. The dollar index is down 0.5%. Sentiment is still cautious after the increase in the tariffs. There still seems to be a lot of wonderment in the markets at all of this. There's still a lot of talk in the markets about the idea that perhaps none of this will come to pass, that perhaps these tariffs will be backed down by Congress. Perhaps everybody will back away, take the hands off the triggers. I hope that that happens. I also don't understand why Congress isn't stepping in and reasserting its trade authority. I don't think the president, no matter which party, should have this much trade authority. It's why I thought the TPP should have been ratified through the Senate. It should not have been a situation where TPP was being signed off on by the presidents of the United States. All treaties should be ratified by the Senate. The Senate should have the power to look over any sort of tariff arrangements the president of the United States is making. It was not granted under Article 2 of the Constitution. Okay, the presidential power does not include foreign commerce. That is under the legislative power. The idea that the president can unilaterally decide tariff rates seems to me foolish and counterproductive if the president wants to continue strengthening the economy. Now, with all that said, the media continue to do an awful job of covering the Trump administration. So yesterday, there was a report from the Associated Press, and it made all the rounds, and the headline was really disturbing. And when I first saw the headline, I too was disturbed. Here was the headline: U.S. Army quietly discharging immigrant recruits. So if you just read that headline from the AP, you would assume that the U.S. Army was quietly discharging immigrant recruits, that they were seeking out people who are immigrants or illegal immigrants who joined the Army for citizenship and then trying to dismiss them out of some sort of misguided xenophobia. But that's not actually what the article says. And it turns out that's not the way that any of this works. According to the AP, some immigrant U.S. Army reservists and recruits who enlisted in the military with a promised path to citizenship are being abruptly discharged, the Associated Press has learned. The AP was unable to quantify how many men and women who enlisted through the special recruitment program have been booted from the Army, but immigration attorneys say they know of more than 40 who have been discharged or whose status has become questionable, jeopardizing their future. Okay, so let's start with the statistics here. There's 70,000 members of the United States military who are immigrants. The AP has tracked down 40 and said these 40 are now being discharged, and they say this is because of xenophobia. You might wonder why they're not going after all 70,000 if this is really about xenophobia. The answer is because it's not about xenophobia. According to AP, some of the service members said they were not told why they were discharged. Others who pressed for answers said the Army informed them they'd been labeled as security risks because they have relatives abroad, or because the Defense Department had not completed background checks on them. So here's the way this works. When you go and you sign up for the military, you are now technically a recruit, but you have not gone through basic training. And if you have not gone through basic training, that is because they've not completed the background check on you. So if you sign up, and it turns out that you were once a drug runner for MS-13, you are going to be rejected from the Army. You are now an immigrant recruit rejected under the AP's tally. But the AP is attempting to create the perception that there is a widespread Trump administration policy to get rid of immigrants in the United States military, which, by any stretch of the imagination, would be a ridiculous policy if it existed. But it doesn't exist, because that's not what's happening here. Eligible recruits are required to have legal status in the U.S., such as a student visa, before enlisting. More than 5,000 immigrants were recruited into the program in 2016. An estimated 10,000 are currently serving. Most go to the Army. Some also go to other military branches, according to the AP. To become citizens, the service members need an honorable service designation, which can come up after even just a few days at boot camp. But the recently discharged service members have had their basic training delayed, so they can't actually be naturalized. So again, is this really just evil, terrible, horrible, or is this the Defense Department doing exactly what they're supposed to do? The Defense Department says all service members, i.e. contracted recruits, active duty, Guard and Reserve, and those with an honorable discharge are protected from deportation. So this is not, again, this is dramatic misreporting on a wild level. So CBS News military analyst Mike Lyons actually debunked this. He's a former West Point grad. He said some immigrant U.S. Army reservists and recruits who enlisted in the military with a promised path to citizenship are being abruptly discharged, the Associated Press has learned. But he says that this is not the case, right? He says that this is an exaggeration. He says the story is not framed properly. This happens to natural-born citizens, too. I know many U.S. citizens who weren't allowed to start basic because a bad background check came back. Lyons noted that one of many possible reasons why a recruit might not make it to boot camp is because they didn't complete background checks. It could be a myriad of reasons: clearances, failed physicals, bad background checks, which eliminate natural-born citizens as well. The Army in particular needs people. There's another side to this story that's not being told. Lyons says AP reporters, quote, failed to get the other side of the story or sized the issue compared to everyone who enlisted. There's a good reason they are denied entering basic training. Center for Security Policy's Michael Waller explains the murderous immigrant gang known as MS-13 has infiltrated the U.S. Army as well. He says the U.S. is correct to discharge such people and any other security risks. Luckily, the U.S. military has a lot of foreign-born recruits who add immensely to our capabilities. So everybody sort of jumped to conclusions on this because this is what happens. The media create these false headlines, and then everybody jumps to conclusions based on the false headline, and then it turns out they're simply not true. Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Margaret Stock, who created the so-called military accessions vital to the national interest program, has opposed the fact that this was combined with the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program under then-President Barack Obama. Right? This created additional security screenings for those waiting in the MAVNI pipeline, right? The military accessions vital to the national interest pipeline. Colonel Stock, Lieutenant Colonel Stock, she said, the decision to pair Mavny with DACA sounded like the death knell for the program because Mavny was never intended as a way to address the hot potato of political citizenship for undocumented long-term residents. She says they made a colossal error, frankly. Instead of trying to recruit the DACAs separately, they tried to shove the DACAs into the Mavny program, and that happened to wreck both programs. So just brilliant stuff there by the AP, and of course, brilliant stuff there from the Obama administration, as per the usual arrangement. Now, in just a second, I should tell you the stupidest story of the day. It is an incredibly stupid story, and you will love it because it is just that stupid. But first, I want to say thanks to our sponsors over at Boll and Branch. So, we're never going to agree on everything, but the one thing we can agree on is that none of us are getting enough sleep. Well, one of the reasons you may not be getting enough sleep is because your sheets are uncomfortable. I know. You don't think about your sheets all that often. You went to one of these local retail shops, you picked up some sheets, you didn't think about it much after that. But then every night you're sweating through the sheets and you're thinking, why is this so uncomfortable? Well, that's what Boll and Branch is here to cure. You can buy directly from them, so you're essentially paying wholesale prices. They are made from pure 100% organic cotton. It means that Boll and Branch products start out super soft. They get even softer over time. Luxury sheets can cost up to $1,000 in the store. Boll and Branch sheets are only a couple of $100. You'd think that's expensive for sheets. It really isn't. It's really cheap for luxury sheets. More than that, it's really comfortable, and you're in those sheets every single night, so why wouldn't you actually want to get something nice? Everyone who tries Boll and Branch sheets loves them. We have them at our house. Not only do we have them, we got rid of all of our other sheets. They're so good. That's why they have thousands of five-star reviews. Even 3 U.S. presidents sleep on Boll and Branch sheets. Shipping is free. You can try them for 30 nights. If you don't love them, send them back for a refund, but you're not going to want to send them back. To get started, right now, my listeners get $50 off your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com, promo code Ben. That's bollandbranch.com, BOLLN branch.com, promo code Ben for $50 off your first set of sheets. Go check it out right now. bollandbranch.com, promo code Ben, get $50 off your first set of sheets. Okay, so the derangement on the left is a source of great amusement to, I think, a lot of people, as well it should be, because it's hilarious. This is the best article of this kind I have seen in a long time, and I've been reading a lot of these lately, okay? This is the actual title of a real article. This is not fake. This is not pretend. It's by a woman named Bridget Delaney. Bridget Delaney in the UK Guardian, writing on Independence Day. One of the reasons, this article may be one of the reasons we declared independence from Britain. Bridget Delaney writes, I stopped going to the gym because of Trump. Now I can't open jars. That is the actual title of the piece. And she's serious because it's fantastic. So here is what Bridget Delaney writes. It was November 2016. The only person I knew who believed Trump would win the U.S. election was the owner of my gym. This was clearly a ridiculous prediction, so seeing the chance for some easy money, I offered to bet him $100 that Hillary would win. But the gym owner, clearly not wanting to do his dough, pointed at this horrible thing in the corner with the name sled and said, if Trump wins, you have to pull 70 kilograms on it. It was double what I could usually pull. And if I won the bet, the gym owner will pull double his personal best. I didn't want Trump to win. He'd grabbed a woman by the bleep and mocked a reporter's disability. He'd promised to build a wall and called Mexicans rapists. The thought of his presidency was frightening. But so was pulling the sled. What if I herniated a disc? After Trump claimed victory, I went to the gym in a foul mood. Just effing load up the effing sled, all right? Let's get it over with, I said without much grace as I strapped a belt around my waist. I pulled the sled like a human oxen while being filmed. It would be like a human ox, actually. And the gym staff cheered, but I did it. The Trump victory soured my successful show of strength. Yeah, I could pull a pretend sled, but how was that going to help me when the world had been destroyed by nuclear weapons or climate change? Not kidding. Actual article from The Guardian. Hungry and sore, I repaired to a restaurant down the road I had never visited and where I'd never seen anyone come or go from. The silent restaurant, no background music, no other diners, seemed like the perfect place to welcome the end of the global liberal order. What new political order had been born tonight? An elderly waiter appeared and handed me a menu. Most things on it were not available. The one dish that was unspeakably awful, and the color and texture of cement, was available. I never went back, but I also didn't return to the gym. I associated it now with Donald Trump, the bad meal, and pulling the sled. It was November 9th, 2016, and my thinking about fitness changed almost overnight. In tune with the times, it became more Trump, less Obama. Trump explained his exercise routine like this to Reuters. I get exercise. I walk. I this, I that. I run over to the building next door. I get more exercise than people think. Well, I walked. I this, I that. Months passed, then a year. Trump was going to be in power another 1,000 years, or at least that's what it felt like, writes this crazy person, Bridget Delaney. And then she continues, could I really avoid the gym for the entirety of his presidency? I missed being strong enough to open jars and carry groceries. So last week I returned to the gym, slinking back in as if no time had passed. I hoped that by wearing a puffy jacket and MC Hammer pants I could hide my lack of definition, that I could pretend I'd maintained fitness on my own, at home, running to the building next door on the couch while tweeting. But you can't hide fitness. You either have it or you don't. You can either lift the dumbbell or you can wobble on your 5th rep and drop the load. You're either strong or you are weak. And I was weak. I was fit in 2016 before Trump, but when you stop, it goes, and it goes quickly. A week or two, and you have to start again with the 2-kilogram dumbbells and the tremor in your forearms. I returned again this week to the boredom and pain of the gym, trying to build up back to the strength I had before Trump became president. The struggle is Sisyphean. That's a real article that happened in real life, in the world. Yep. Yeah, I have a feeling some people can't handle the fact that Trump became president. You getting that impression? Because they crazy. Okay, so speaking of the crazy, so an actual older gentleman decided that it was necessary to assault a teenager who was wearing a MAGA hat. So this is just wonderful. There's a teenager in Texas who went to a Whataburger restaurant, and he was wearing a MAGA hat. He went like 2 a.m., and this guy who was working at the Whataburger decided to go over, rip the MAGA hat over this guy's head, and then throw a drink on him. Here's a little bit of what it sounded like.
You ain't support.
Right now, police are looking for that man who was caught on tape, on camera, throwing a drink at a teenager in that video, the man in the red hat, and walks off with the teenager's hat, pulled it off so aggressively, he also pulled out some hair with it.
Okay, so there's just a charming fellow. His name is Kino Jimenez. He's a bartender in San Antonio, so he's a genius. Now, maybe he'll be in Congress. I mean, who knows? Bartenders for Congress is like a new thing, apparently. And he is now he has now been arrested. He will probably do some jail time, or at least some probation time, as well he should. The part of all of this that's hilarious is that there were, seriously, a bunch of people on the left who decided that it was worthwhile supporting all of this. Right? So, for example, Mark Lamont Hill came out and he suggested support for the MAGA hat stripping guy. He said that it's just terrible that this guy was arrested. So he tweeted out that there's a guy named, I guess, Van Lathan. I don't know who that is. He says, wish I could take the high road, but your MAGA hat reads like a swastika to me, so yeah, maybe I'm no longer a decent person. Yeah, you're no longer a decent person, right? If somebody wearing a Hillary hat, and I said that Hillary hat stands for abortion on demand and the murder of the unborn, and then I took that person's hat and I threw a soda on them, you'd think I was a jerk, because I would be a jerk. Mark Lamont Hill tweeted back a bunch of crying, laughing emojis, because it's so funny. Then he says, I actually don't advocate throwing drinks on people, not at all. But yes, I think MAGA hats deliberately reflect a movement that conjures racism, homophobia, xenophobia, etc. So yes, it's a little harder to feel sympathy when someone gets Coca-Cola thrown on him. So in other words, I don't condone throwing drinks on people, but I sort of condone throwing drinks on people. Well, you wonder why President Trump is so popular with the base. The reason is because President Trump's basic attitude toward the world is F all these people. And that's his basic attitude toward the world. And when you hear Michael Eric Dyson, a professor at, I think, Georgetown, talking about how Republicans are all racist, you get the appeal for a lot of Trump supporters. Here's Michael Eric Dyson going crazy on CNN as per his usual routine.
Martin Luther King Jr. said, it's not the white supremacists who are the problem. It's white moderates and conservatives who tend to be complicit with that by trying to dismiss it. Brother Jennings, much respect for you, but this is ludicrous. What you're doing is even more egregious because you're attempting to justify, legitimate, and make valid what are essentially naked, raw statements of racism. And until white folk like you can stand up and find your spine, you will continue to be complicit in the racist animus of this country.
Okay, so for all of the people who actually voted for President Trump, for all the people who plan on voting for President Trump, and for all the people who are doing so because they think the Democrats are nuts and because they like Trump on policy, being called a racist is actually not all that pleasant. It's the worst thing you can call somebody in American life, as my mentor Andrew Breitbart used to say. Calling people racist just because you disagree with them on policy or because they support a politician you don't like is a pretty astonishing charge. And it's one of the reasons why Trump is so all-fired popular right now. It's because he goes to rallies and he doesn't seem to care. He just goes and he says what he wants to say. And that has some serious appeal for a lot of folks on the right. So President Trump was rallying in Montana, in Great Falls, Montana. Trump obviously loves this stuff. So I was on Fox News yesterday, and I was supposed to be on at the time that President Trump was speaking, which means they push you off until President Trump is done speaking because he's the president and they like to cover his rallies, which makes perfect sense. So Trump goes on and on. He went for an hour and 12 minutes yesterday at this rally in Great Falls, Montana, which is extraordinarily long for the president. And it's a long comedy routine, right? Everything that he does is basically a long comedy routine. It's really, really funny. It's really irreverent. Half the stuff he says is not, strictly speaking, true, but a lot of it is really driving and powerful, and Trump he punches back, right? I mean, this is why they love him. You get the people saying, I can't open a jar anymore because I won't exercise thanks to Trump. And you get people saying that they're going to rip hats off teenagers' heads. and you have people saying that all Republicans are racist, and it comes off as kind of refreshing when the president of the United States is willing to get down in the mud and punch a little bit. Here's the president of the United States going after the protester who decided to climb the Statue of Liberty, clip 6.
You saw that clown yesterday on the Statue of Liberty? You see the guys that went up there? I wouldn't have done it. I would have said, let's get some nets and let's wait till she comes down. Just get some nets. Really. You see those guys, the bravery of doing that? What a group.
Okay, honestly, like, all right, like, I know, should I be upset that he said that they shouldn't go up and rescue the lady? She wanted to be up there, so I don't really see the problem. I kind of agree with him. I'm not sure why anybody should risk their life. We'll get some nets up there. We'll get, like, how about we should just surround the Statue of Liberty with bounce houses, and the lady can jump down onto bounce houses. So you wonder why people like Trump. That's why people like Trump. And there was more like this, right? It was just, this is the best part of it. He goes after Elizabeth Warren. And Elizabeth Warren, of course, has been virtue signaling. Some people, Charlie Cook is saying he thinks she's the front runner for 2020, which would be a huge mistake by Democrats. Elizabeth Warren is Hillary Clinton part 2, except less charming. And Elizabeth Warren wants to run, and she's been, virtue signaling all over the place. She's really awful. I mean, I didn't have her as a professor at Harvard Law, but I was at Harvard Law when she was a professor there. She was not well liked, shall we say, among those of us on the right, or those of us who just didn't like people who are kind of mean generally. But Trump goes after her because of her fake Native American ancestry. This is just spectacular.
Let's say I'm debating Pocahontas, right? And in the middle of the debate, when she proclaims that she's of Indian heritage because her mother said she has high cheekbones, I will give you $1 million to your favorite charity, paid for by Trump, if you take the test and it shows you're an Indian,
Now, is that actually going to happen? No. But Elizabeth Warren knows she's not Native American. That's the part that's hysterical. So she tweeted out, well, Donald Trump wants to give DNA tests to everyone, to me, to immigrant children at the border. Okay, first of all, the immigrant children at the border being given DNA tests, the reason they're given DNA tests. It's to determine that the people who say they are their parents are actually their parents. That's legitimately why they are given DNA tests at the border, because we want to make sure that it's not human smugglers who are trying to bring children in for human trafficking. But I love that Elizabeth Warren tries to just to swivel off of the fact that she's not Native American, but continues to claim Native American ancestry. Right? Again, you got to love the guy when he says this kind of stuff. Right? That's really funny stuff. Okay, I have a little bit more on that. Plus, I want to get to the mailbag. First, we're going to have to go over to dailywire.com, and you're going to have to subscribe. For $9.99 a month, you get the rest of this show live, and you can be part of our mailbag. You can get your questions answered today when we have our events. Like we have big events coming up in Dallas and Phoenix. Get your tickets now because they are running out at dailywire.com/events. If you are a subscriber, you would have first access to the VIP tickets. And those are the people who we actually get to hang out backstage and become best friends and go fishing together and everything. It's going to be great. But you get to, when you're a subscriber, you get all of those privileges. Also, you get the rest of Andrew Klavan's show live, the rest of Michael Knowles' show live. When you become the annual subscriber, $99 a year, you get this. The very greatest in all beverage vessels, the leftist tears, hot or cold tumbler. Look at it. Behold its glory. And when you subscribe at YouTube or iTunes, which you can do for free, you also get to see our Sunday special. This Sunday special this week is pretty awesome. Sam Harris stopped by. We talked religion and God and the Bible and atheism and all sorts of goodies. So go check that out. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.